We have got a lot to sort through for Week 16 because we're recording this on a Wednesday due to the holiday, and unfortunately, there are a lot of things still left up in the air for the Week 16 main slate, and it's not just that. It's also we don't have the Titans, we don't have the Packers, we don't have the Saints, we don't have the Vikings, we don't have a lot of the staples for NFL DFS for offenses that we turn to each and every week. So what we got to do for today is dig in, try to find some games to stack outside of Chiefs versus Falcons, try to find some value somewhere, and see how we can make lineups work in Week 16. Welcome on into the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, powered by numberFire. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com. Joined here, as always, by Brandon Gadula. He is the managing editor for numberFire.com. Brandon, happy holidays to you. How you doing?
Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. I'm doing good. Doing well, I should say. But this slate has been causing me some problems. I'm still actually in the process of finalizing my player picks at the end of the podcast. Not because I'm not prepared, just because it's a short week, but the state of the slate is currently, as of Wednesday morning, such that I don't love a whole lot of plays. And I have a feeling it will be a very different slate by Sunday. We'll get some injury information. We're operating with very little right now. So it's hard to break down a slate before you get a feel for who's actually going to be out. Obviously, that drives a lot of value. We saw that with Tony Pollard last week. I feel like we're going to get some of that come Sunday. But as of right now, the slate is a little stale.
Yeah. I think so we were talking about the player picks. I was like staring at running back forever last night. Looked at my clock, realized it was 9 o'clock at night. I'd written 2 blurbs for my piece that was due this morning. Yeah. And I was like, oh, dang, I'm going to die. And like, it was tough because like, I want to recommend people I want to use, but there aren't really like enough people that I really want to use. Now we're going to go through situations that could play out favorably to give us additional choices like as the week goes along. But as we're talking right now, we don't know if Zeke will play. We don't know if Duke Johnson will play. We don't know if who's the other one I was thinking about? Oh my goodness. Oh, if James Conner will play. I think that one's pretty relevant. I should have had your back, but you should have known that I was thinking about the Steelers running back room that we have not considered in DFS in a decade. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff still up in the air, and we'll talk about that for sure throughout the day today to let you know which situations you want to monitor, which injuries could bring us some value that we actually want to use, and also which games we are stacking outside of Chiefs versus Falcons. Before we do that, though, the Week 16 FanDuel Podcast Network Listener League is posted. As always, it's a $5 entry with 3 entries max, and it is rake-free. That means FanDuel makes nothing off of this contest. All the entries go back to you, the listeners. To enter, go to FanDuel.com/league/listener league. That's FanDuel.com/league/listener league. If you're watching on YouTube right now, you can get a link to it in the podcast post up on numberFire.com for the Week 15 recap. If you're watching after the fact, you can also get it on the Week 16 preview podcast. Or again, FanDuel.com/league/listener league. Eligibility restrictions apply. And let's start things off here with our slate overview. To me, it revolves around trying to find games I want to stack that do not involve the Chiefs and Falcons. That's the only game with a total above 50 for this slate. That's obvious. We want to stack that game. Don't overthink it. Like you want to stack that game. The problem we have in Week 16 that we don't always have is that not every team is motivated to try. And, like, that's an issue. So what are the things standing out to you, Brandon, when it comes to this slate?
Yeah, I mean, motivation's a big factor. Of course, we saw some unlikely teams win this past week and in recent weeks. The Bengals, the Jets really showing life. So just because you don't have playoff odds doesn't mean you can't win. But if you have the choice between 2 teams with playoff hopes and 2 teams with no playoff hopes, I will trust the games where there are playoff implications. So I just want to take a high-level view of this slate. And only 2 games feature 2 teams eliminated from the playoffs. So both teams have no shot. That's the Bengals and the Texans and the Chargers and the Broncos. I will say the Texans are still an interesting offense. The Chargers, at least, are an interesting offense, as much as I hate to admit it. The Broncos have some relevant pieces or viable pieces in a tournament. I won't get there with the Bengals though. But 4 games have both sides with playoff hopes. That's the Seahawks, Rams, Colts, Steelers, Ravens, Giants, and Cowboys, Eagles. These should be the ones that we feel most comfortable with from a trust standpoint, as in, trusting that these teams will probably play like themselves, try to win because it's gotten them in playoff contention. It's less of a thing for the NFC East teams because they're just there sort of by default. But I would say that those are the 4 games at least where I would feel best looking at first outside of Falcons, Chiefs. But one kind of stands out to me, and it's actually Cowboys, Eagles.
Yeah, and if you look at it from a traditional stacking perspective, that game is the one that checks the most boxes, high total, tight spread. That's exactly what you want. You kind of get the same thing from Seahawks, Rams, but
we know that, yeah.
It feels like it should be a buy low spot for both teams, but sometimes there's a buy low spot for a reason, and it's because they're not playing well. That is an issue for sure, and I think that does impact things. Obviously, there's some viability for Ravens Giants, which we'll talk about. Colts Steelers can work. There are some plays there who I don't hate. At least it's a limited number. It's 2, but that's
who's the other?
Jonathan Taylor.
Well, I thought he was the first.
Oh, Benny Snell if James Conner.
Oh, okay. That's more conditional, but
yeah. So 1.5, we'll say, as of Wednesday. But I think that taking into account
over under 3 downfield attempts in that game combined from the quarterbacks.
Well, Zach Pascal's going to get 6, so over.
Okay.
The Colts, I hate the Colts. They're the worst. But I think that taking into account motivation is going to be a positive thing. You don't need to write off teams that aren't in it by any means, especially if they've shown you already that they will play hard despite being eliminated. Like the Jets last week played hard. Apparently Sean McVay called Adam Gase during the week and said, yeah, your guys have played really hard. It's well, they played hard against you too, bud. Oh, well. If they've played hard despite being eliminated, the Falcons, I don't think were officially eliminated until last week. They've been playing hard. They've been out of it for a while. And they've still been playing hard. Same thing for the Texans. So I have more faith in teams that I've seen still try, have some pride out there. I think that definitely helps. But for the most part, this is the time of year where you do want to at least shade things a bit towards the teams with big playoff implications. Injuries to note here for Week 16. Again, not a lot of information, but we're going to go through some situations we are at least keeping an eye on. One of them is Zeke Elliott. Tony Pollard had a big role last week, but head coach Mike McCarthy said that Zeke has a chance to play this week. We'll talk about that situation in the trend section. Clyde Edwards-Helaire will miss this game due to ankle and hip injuries. That makes Le'Veon Bell the team's lead back. And we'll talk about the Chiefs in general in the bookmaker section. But how are you handling Le'Veon Bell at $6,400?
He could be interesting just because running back right now isn't particularly deep, let's say. I think you and I were both struggling to round out 6 combined love candidates at running back. But he played 32% of the snaps last week. That was with Clyde Edwards-Helaire playing 46% of the snaps. But I don't if we look back to week 13 where Edwards-Helaire was active but didn't play, Bell he had 52% of the snaps, 17 adjusted opportunities, which is carries plus 2x targets. He had 11 carries, 3 targets, 2 red zone carries. So, it's more of a floor play probably. I don't know what the ceiling is, and ceiling's probably hard to get at running back this week anyway. So he's a little more appealing from that angle, but I probably won't have a ton of Le'Veon Bell anyway.
I think he's really flawed, but not off the map, despite being flawed. Because, like you said, everyone on the slate's kind of flawed in one way or another, whether it be floor or ceiling. And we're going to talk about other guys like Daryl Henderson, very similar issues to Le'Veon Bell. Yeah. So Bell is someone you can use. I would rather find the salary to get up to Austin Eckler, who's $600 more. But, he's there, and he's an option. And Tony Pollard is 63. So if we get Pollard, just Le'Veon's dust. But if the options get slim, he's there, but not a priority for me despite the injury. We don't know what Duke Johnson's status is for this week. David Johnson played a pretty big role with Duke out last week. So how would you view David at $6,700 if Duke can't go?
We saw a lot of receiving for David Johnson last week. That is very valuable. He saved his day. I don't think he scored a touchdown last week, and had
18 FanDuel points with no touchdown.
Yeah, that's kind of the dream with any running back who can just save their day with receiving. I would probably put Duke. I don't have a good ranking yet because everything feels so fluid with running back, but he would definitely be in consideration for like a cash game lineup at this point at that salary with no Duke Johnson.
Yeah, I think that he grade out below a couple of guys. Like you said, we haven't ranked. We'll go through the ranking system later on in the trend section, but he would be one of the guys you could use. I think he's a third tier option in that range, but third tier could be enough. So I think that he's definitely viable. Cam Akers won't play this week due to a high ankle sprain, and that puts Daryl Henderson back in the quote-unquote lead back role. Sean McVay said both guys will play. So what is your level of interest in Daryl Henderson at $5,600?
There's some, just not a lot. I think it's going to depend mostly on how you view this game, which I'm probably lower on than a lot of people just because I'm hypersensitive to.
People are very reactive, and I feel like they will be very low in this game as a result of what's happened the past couple weeks.
I think when you put it in the context of this entire slate, that won't end up being the case necessarily. I could be wrong on that. I was going to say Henderson's probably very close to a game stack only option where I wouldn't really play him outside of, like, I'm not going to fill out my lineups with Daryl Henderson.
Daryl Henderson or Le'Veon Bell for you?
Bell.
Probably lean.
I think Bell's team is probably going to score 40, and I would be surprised if the Rams get to like 40 plays because of the Seahawks plays. Not quite, but I think that I feel so much better with the Chiefs offense than the Rams, which is not fair necessarily. I know the salaries aren't the same, but I think that the Rams could bust, and I don't really see any paths for the Chiefs just imploding.
I think busting is less likely, but like being fine is in the range of outcomes. I'm higher on the Rams offense than you are.
Right.
Daryl Henderson in the games where Cam Akers has played less than 20% of the snaps has 18 adjusted opportunities per game. Not a good number for a running back. 75 yards from scrimmage per game. That's not ideal, but 39% of the team's red zone usage in that time, which is pretty good for a running back. So I could see a scenario where if Henderson gets you 75 yards and 2 touchdowns, which is, I think, within his range of outcomes here, I think that'd be good. With his red zone usage and his yardage, that's not outrageous. That's on the curve from a distribution perspective.
I'm just so far down on Jared Goff, and he's not throwing the ball. He's not pushing the ball downfield. I think that it just doesn't really set up for the type of game that I like.
We know he can. They put up 38 points against the Cardinals like 2 weeks ago, and they were really good against Tampa Bay, a much better defense than Seattle. Like they are a volatile offense that can suck one week and be great the next. I think that's why we can go to them despite the fact they were bad last week. Like they're just volatile. We have to expect volatility or accept volatility at times. And I think it's within Henderson's range of outcomes to be a good play. I don't think I can go more than like 15% exposure, but like I think 15% is fair.
Yeah, I'm not saying Henderson's out. Like I said, he's more of a game stack only, and I will stack this game in certain situations. Mm-hmm. This is just a very good example of why I hate watching film, because I see Jared Goff do certain things, and I'm like, I can't.
Yeah.
But then I look at the data, and it's like, occasionally, in the right spots. Yeah. Although he hasn't had a lot of easy matchups this year.
No, and he's been terrible in the easy matchups he has had, which is weird.
Yeah.
Antonio Gibson was able to get in some practice last week, and it sounds like there's a chance he goes here in Washington. Can still make the playoffs. They are a team that needs to win. Gibson, they have shown us they think he is their best back. So would you be tempted by Antonio Gibson if he were to go?
Yeah, against the Panthers, I would. Gibson is someone I've been wary of because he's really boosted by touchdowns. He's just scoring at an abnormally high rate. But if we get him at a $6,600 salary against the Panthers, with how the rest of the running back slate looks, I'd have a lot of interest.
If you look at his sample from weeks 2 to 12, he had 20 adjusted opportunities per game, but 83 yards and a good amount of red zone work. And we saw that trending up towards the back half of that sample. So I think it's enough to make Antonio Gibson in play. The question is, where do we view him relative to Le'Veon Bell and David Johnson? Like, let's assume that Duke sits, and let's assume that Gibson gets in a full practice by Friday. How do you rank those three? I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but how would you rank those three?
Between David Johnson, Bell, and Gibson?
Yeah.
Wow, 3 generational talents. I was just thinking, as you said, that David Johnson and Le'Veon Bell were like the running backs. And now
I had both on a dynasty league, and that was fun for a bit. Now it's not.
Built around David Johnson. But anyway, I would go David Johnson, Antonio Gibson, Le'Veon Bell.
I think that sounds right. I think I'd agree with that ranking there. Where was I here? I just left my sheet and came back.
There seems to be at least. Oh, okay.
You can read it.
There seems to be at least a chance that Christian McCaffrey can go here. He's expected to practice Wednesday. Let's say McCaffrey gets the green light. What level of confidence would you have in him at 10,000, given that they're not in the playoff hunt?
Pretty low. Right? Like, they have no incentive to push him really hard. He's been banged up like 6 different times this year. I feel like
they were not great when we saw him, whatever week it was, 7 or something.
Week 9, I believe.
Week 9. It was an odd-numbered week.
But like, it was week 9. They could have conceivably made the playoffs, and they had a couple wins at that point. Like,
it wasn't looking great.
They were 3-2 at one point, and I bet them over 5.5 wins. I was feeling great. I no longer feel great. Like, they're a different team now than they were then from a wins perspective, and I don't think there's any incentive to push him. I would be concerned.
I think if McCaffrey plays, you have to have – if you're the type of person who builds 50 lineups, let's say, you have to have some.
I agree. I think that some is fine. I can't go more than that, though. Like, I would put an actual cap on it to make sure I don't go overboard, because there's just so much that could go wrong.
He's just the one guy who –
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. Like,
he's averages 33 adjusted opportunities in his healthy games, or just his games. He's had, I think, didn't even finish 2 of the 3.
60% snap rate in one of them. Yeah.
Like I said this about Dalvin Cook a few weeks back, but we're just waiting for, like, we want the next Christian McCaffrey. Nobody's been Christian McCaffrey this year for as good as Dalvin's been. Nobody's quite been Christian McCaffrey with the receiving. So I think that I'm higher on him than you are, but I do agree that you have to cap it a little bit.
Right. I think that's the way to play it. Like, get some exposure, because if he has his real role, he's the best running back in the slate. I just think the odds that he gets that real role are a little bit lower, and you're not getting a discount either. He's 10,000. So James Robinson is dealing with an ankle injury, so his status this week is unknown. He's not practicing on Wednesday. Daria Gumbawale and Divino Zigbo would likely get work if Robinson can't go. Would you be tempted by either?
Not really.
Agreed. James Conner stands to play this week, but is still uncertain. We wouldn't use Conner if he played. That's obvious. But if he sits, Benny Snell is $5,400. Would he interest you at all if Conner can't go?
78% snap rate last week, 26 adjusted opportunities, 21.3 over the past 3 without Conner getting red zone work.
Mike Tomlin said good things about him on Monday. Mike Tomlin's a pretty straight shooter, so I trust him more than others.
Yeah, I would. I'd have interest in Snell.
I would. So among the guys below 7,000, let's take Tony Pollard out of the equation. If we don't get James Conner, Benny Snell might be my favorite. I think I would probably put him above David Johnson, above Antonio Gibson, above Le'Veon Bell, above Daryl Henderson pretty easily. I think that he would be a cash game consideration for me, which is scary. And if DeForest Buckner can't play, I would probably be pretty heavy on Benny Snell. As scary as that may be, I think it would be the smart way to play things here.
Scrolling through here, yeah, I think I would agree with you. Although I don't think it's as scary, because we've seen him get work. We've seen him get red zone work.
Red zone work when Conner was healthy, yeah.
Like, a lot of snaps, and you're not guaranteed. Let's say James Conner's out. I would feel like Benny Snell's going to play at least 70% of snaps if he's healthy and finishes the game. Right. Daryl Henderson's probably going to get
60 at most.
At the high end because of Malcolm Brown. So
he could also be at 40, realistically.
Yeah. So, I would probably feel good saying, because we haven't even got. It's been so running back heavy so far. We want Patrick Mahomes. We want Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce. Those guys have high salaries, so Benny Snell goes a long way.
You want to run it back with Calvin Ridley or Julio Jones?
Yeah,
doesn't make it any easier. So I think that Snell, I really like James Conner. Again, rest up, bud. Get healthy for the playoffs and let Benny Snell eat. After being limited in Week 15, Keenan Allen did not practice on Tuesday for the Chargers. Hunter Henry also did not practice. So it sounds like Mike Williams was out there. We'll talk about them in the trends section, or is it bookmaker? I don't know, whatever. Either way, let's move into the trend section here for week number 16, talking about the Chicago Bears, Brandon. They're playing decently well, and you could say, hey, the matchups have been easy, but hey, look at their week 16 opponent too. What do you see with the Bears here heading into week 16?
Yeah, so we want game stacks, obviously, but if we don't have a bunch of game stacks, we at least want good offenses, and right now I think that's the Bears since Mitchell Trubisky's return. There's a lot of big spreads on this slate. Not many high totals. In this game between the Jaguars and Bears does not qualify as a tight spread with where it is at 7.5 points, but it's not necessarily a hugely lopsided game. It's not a double-digit spread, and the Jaguars are 25th in numberFire's opponent-adjusted defensive numbers. The Bears' playoff odds are about 32% according to numberFire, so they're not sitting pretty, but that also means they have to win. That reduces the odds that they take the foot off the pedal. And I feel pretty good in saying that we're going to see 100% from the Bears this week. And with how they've played in recent weeks, it's really promising. Since Trubisky took over again 4 weeks ago, they ranked 4th in the NFL in seconds per play when their pre-snap win probability was between 20 and 80%. They're now 19th in pass rate, but that's not bad. It's really only the outliers that are particularly bad, and 19th is not an outlier. They're 14th if you narrow that window to 40 to 60%. So they've been passing more until last week when they didn't have to pass much. But this bodes really well for the Bears offense. Trubisky over the past 4 games is at 0.20, passing net expected points per dropback. The NFL average is 0.13. Yes, he's had 2 really easy matchups, but the Jaguars are also bad. In just the 2 games against bottom-tier pass defenses since his return, he's at 0.29, passing net expected points per dropback. That's trending up toward almost league-leading efficiency. He should be able to move the ball, and that could lead us to 2 of the best plays at their respective positions on the slate. David Montgomery just had 32 carries, 2 touchdowns. He's your boy. I want to give you some love for being in on David Montgomery heavily last week, but he's now averaging 20.
Oh, well, mistakes were made.
25.5 adjusted opportunities per game without Tariq Cohen. He's done something with his opportunities lately because of some good matchups, yes, but he's had volumes. He's had the volume for weeks now, and he's turned it into production, and this is another good matchup. So he might be the RB1 on the slate at his salary of $7,800. And then we have Allen Robinson in a revenge game. Robinson has a 28% target share over the past 4 games with Trubisky back. That's 9.5 targets per game, is 1.8 downfield targets, 2.3 red zone targets in that sample. If you weight that for the extra value of a downfield target and a red zone target in terms of expected fantasy points, he's 5th on the main slate among all receivers. He's 4th if you remove Julio Jones, but he trails only Calvin Ridley, Tyreek Hill, and Deontay Johnson. So it's just saw Jim's face. Yeah, it makes sense, but then there's
weighted target with weighted hands.
But the Jaguars are 28th in target success rate allowed to receivers, so I think Robinson at 7,500 is pretty much a core play, especially with the lack of star running backs. This could be a week where you go really balanced if you want to go that route. And even Darnell Mooney's in play, 16% of the team's targets with multiple deep targets in 3 of these 4 games. 84% of the routes or more in all 4 of these games. His salary is only $5,400. I know you'll say no to this, but Trubisky has 2 games with at least 24 FanDuel points this season, just no more than 267 passing yards. For 7,200, I think in the right builds, if it really unlocks a Chiefs Falcons mini stack with Jim shaking his head violently.
You can see me now because you can see my reactions to things you say. You used to have a bad computer, so you couldn't see me. Now you can see me sticking my tongue out, shaking my head. Whatever.
You wouldn't play a Trubisky lineup if it got you like Tyreek and Ridley.
I could use Jared Goff. I'd rather use Goff. I don't like Goff this week, but I can use Baker, who's 76.
Yeah. Anyway, thoughts on the Bears? Do you like the Jaguars at all on the other end, or is this kind of just Montgomery, just Robinson?
Yes, I'd rather get punched in the face than use Darnell Mooney. He has not had more than 50 yards since November 1st. He has topped 50 yards twice this year. No more than 69 yards. This is coming from someone who is going to talk up Denzel Mims in 15 seconds. However, I'd rather lose money on Denzel Mims than Darnell Mooney. I don't want to use Darnell Mooney at all. I don't want to use Trubisky at all. But I love Montgomery and Robinson. I think that they, like you said, are among the best options at their positions. I think there are other guys in the 7,000 range I do like at receivers. So it's not like Robinson is by himself, but like he's definitely in the mix as being the top guy there. So very much yes to Montgomery, very much yes to Robinson. No to Mooney and Trubisky.
No Cole Kmet.
I probably shouldn't, but like realistically, will I get some exposure by Sunday? Probably, yeah.
I think he doubled up Jimmy Graham and routes last week. I know the volume was just down everywhere last week.
Yeah,
and they didn't have to throw.
And my process at tight end is get good implied totals because you want touchdown chances. They have that. So realistically, I shouldn't use Kmet, but it's like Christian Kirk last week. Like I shouldn't use him, but like I know I'm going to. So like I should be transparent about that. So I'll probably use Kmet, but I don't want to seek him out, I guess.
And then any Jaguars on the other end?
Nope.
No DJ Chark?
Nope.
Getting all the downfield work?
You?
I shouldn't. I might, but wide receiver is just really bad.
Would you rather use Mooney or Chark?
Probably Mooney.
I'd rather use Chark by a mile. And I don't want to use Chark. So Darnell Mooney, 3-touchdown game with 23 yards receiving incoming. Guaranteed. Let's talk about another fun offense.
The Jets now, yeah.
Another fun offense. It's the Jets. Outside of the Chiefs Falcons, we're digging for potential shootouts this weekend. I think one of them that's at least kind of interesting is the Jets and the Browns in New Jersey. And the Brown side's obvious. Baker Mayfield is basically Patrick Mahomes. It's a joke. Please don't yell at me on Twitter, as someone else did. He's averaging 0.35, passing net expected points per dropback since Odell Beckham's injury. That'd be tied with Mahomes and Rodgers for first in the league if it were his full season number. So he's playing well. It's been partly because of good matchups. But again, like Trubisky, good matchup again this week. But we need the other side to keep pace, especially against a run-heavy offense like the Browns. And the Jets might be able to do at least something here because the reason is that they have all three of their wide receivers healthy, and that makes them a different offense. They've had all of Mims, Crowder, and Perriman healthy for 5 games this year. In those 5, they've averaged 21.8 points per game and scored at least 23 in all but 1. In the other 9 games, they have averaged 10.8 points per game. What the heck? They were able to move the ball last week against the Rams. The Rams are the best, even after that game, the best schedule-adjusted pass defense in football, and the Browns are 28th. 2 of those 5 games in that sample came against teams in the bottom half of the league against the pass. The Jets scored 28 in both those, and actually the other 3 were all against top 10 teams. So it's not as if it's been schedule based here for the Jets. They've been good. So with the 3 receivers healthy, I think the Jets will move the ball and score points, which boosts both offenses. So I'm actually okay stacking this game, and that means we're going back to Denzel Mims. What could go wrong? In this 5-game sample, Mims leads with 25% of the overall targets and 42% of the deep targets. He has not had double-digit FanDuel points yet, but the building blocks, Brandon, they are there. I like Mims at 53, but I'm also going to Rashad Perriman at 56, especially if Mims starts to get popular because he has similar market shares. He's shown the ability to have an upside game. It's a revenge game against the Browns. I prefer Mims straight up, but I will pivot to Perriman if need be and use Perriman as a differentiation point. Jamison Crowder has just 2 deep targets in those games. He's getting touchdowns, but I'm not into him at all. Like in theory, it could be fine, but I don't care. For the Browns, I'm willing to consider Baker Mayfield at $7,600. He's not super high on my list, but among the guys below 8,000, he might be my favorite. He will wind up in my player pool. I can guarantee that. I am also going to involve Nick Chubb, Jarvis Landry, and Rashard Higgins. Chubb is averaging 113 yards from scrimmage per game his past 4 games. His snap rate's been higher in that span. That ranks 5th on this slate. So his red zone usage is up too, and we know he has the ability to have a ceiling. He shouldn't be the highest salaried guy in this slate based on his role. However, I think it's kind of like Derrick Henry in week 6, where sure, there are flaws. We can nitpick all day. However, there aren't a ton of good alternatives. We should use the good player. Nick Chubb's a good player. So I think I'm going to have him between 20 and 30% probably. He's not going to be my highest exposure running back for this week, but I do need to have some because he logically does make sense. Jarvis Landry, 29% target share in games with Hooper and without Odell. He's at just 1 deep target per game, but he has 39% of the red zone targets. I think that's enough upside at $6,500. Rashard Higgins is 58. He has half the deep targets in this time. The past 3 games, he has 4, 4, and 5 deep targets, and Hooper did play in 2 of those. So Higgins has at least 68 receiving yards in all those games. I'm hoping to be higher on this game than others, and it's decently easy to stack. And I think that Higgins actually is one of the better receiver plays in the 5,000 range, probably because it's a bad range, but also because I think he's kind of good. So do you have enough faith that the Jets can show life here to actually stack this one up?
I mean, you make good points. The only issue I have is just believing in the Jets to begin with. But I would say I have the most interest, and I know you were talking about Brashad Perriman revenge here, but I have the most interest in Mims.
Yeah.
He's not scored yet this year, which is, I mean, it makes sense. He should have about 2 touchdowns based on his efficiency and his production. The yardage has been fairly capped. He has no more than 4 catches in a game. I feel like this is one of those spots where you'd say at a certain point you have to do something with the targets. It's not necessarily his fault, all of it, but I don't want to get overexposed to Denzel Mims because the bust potential is very real.
I think that the best spot he's had this year is the Raiders game, and in that game I think he had 40 yards. So the bust potential, like you said, is very real. And that is something to consider, and it means we can't go I think I had way too much Mims in that game if I recall correctly. It could go very poorly, but I still think there is enough here to justify going having him as a fringe core play. That's how I phrase it.
I mean,
here that or allocate X percentage exposure to Jets wide receiver to be named later, and you make half of them Rashad Perriman and half Denzel Mims.
Sure, I don't like doing that though.
No, you're
realistically,
right.
unless you're duplicating that lineup.
Yeah.
If you're mixing and matching it, and one of them puts up let's be realistic, 15 or 16 FanDuel points is a high end. I know Perriman had a 24.6, but overall it's been low. And the other guy puts up 5 or 6 or 7, which is very typical. Those lineups can really fall behind. So I would probably just roll the dice, flip a coin, really dig in and pick one. I would think it'd be Mims for me.
Yeah.
So no Perriman. I think I'd have to make that distinction. I don't want to coin. It's different to coin flip like Tariq Cohen, or let's say Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones is a better example. It's better to coin flip those guys.
Right.
That's just how I'm starting to view things more.
How would you rank Mooney, Higgins, and Mims?
Higgins, Mooney, Mims.
I would go Higgins, Mims, Mooney, which is fun.
I think. Sorry, I got a bug on my desk.
Do you want to do a bet between Mims and Mooney?
Oh boy, we've made some bad bets in our time.
I think this is a good one. No, this would be a great one.
All right, we'll do it.
Okay, so I have Mims half PPR points. You have Mooney half PPR points.
Sure.
Okay, cool. I like this. This is a great bet. Best one we've ever made. Thoughts on the Browns offense? Are you going to get to Baker? How you feel about Higgins and Jarv?
I might get to Baker. Love Jarv, love Higgins. I'm good with Chubb. Like you said, I think it's more of those what are the odds he burns me situations
Yeah.
rather than build around him. But he is I think that guy who, other than maybe Montgomery with what we've seen from him, who can really torch us by not using. So I need to make sure I have some Chubb. I think I'm going to be more open to someone like Baker in that salary range just because I need to get Tariq and Kelsey, Calvin Ridley. So I'll be there. Just
Plus,
not
like if you game stack this game, like if you go Baker, I'm gonna do this right now.
very
Baker,
affordable.
Higgins, Mims, and let's put in the Chargers defense because sorry, Drew. That's 75-20 left. That makes Kelsey gettable or Hill.
Yeah.
You could do a Kelsey Ridley game stack. Not that I'm filling out a full lineup, but I am. You can do a Kelsey Ridley game stack with that. And that's I think that's going to be like I don't think that Baker is the best play on this slate, but I think the advantages of using him are enough where I will use him at times in tournaments.
Yeah. This feels like one of those spots though where I don't know where you are with Jalen Hurts right now. If you love him or not.
I like him. It's good.
What explain to me the difference between when I say I'd be in on Baker at 76 and you say but Jalen Hurts is only 600 more.
Well, I don't think it's a huge gap. Like
Okay.
the gap between Austin Eckler and Le'Veon Bell. I know you weren't saying Le'Veon Bell's better than Austin Eckler, but like in theory, like I think the gap in how I view them is huge. Whereas like the gap between Hurts and Baker is like there is a gap. I'd rather have Hurts straight up, but it's not big enough where I'm gonna like sell my soul for those extra $600. That makes sense.
Yeah. Just a quick one. Matt Ryan. We never talk about Matt Ryan ever. Matt Ryan at 77 or Baker at 76, if you could pick one. Because like Ryan has the game, but Baker has the matchup and current efficiency.
I think because Matt Ryan is playing outdoors against a good pass defense, I would rather go with Baker, but I think it's at least worthwhile to mention Matt Ryan's name.
Yeah.
I'd rather go Baker, though, I think. It's not a huge gap, though, so I think it's fair to bring him up.
Yeah, we just never talk about him, and he's part of that stack. And
yeah,
I don't even know if we're anyway.
The gap between Mahomes and Ryan is only $1,800. Anyway, let's move on to the Cowboys against the Eagles. This one logically makes sense for stacking. So you're going to talk us through the Cowboys since Andy Dalton's return, because obviously we like Hurts. I assume we're in on Miles Sanders, but what do you see with this game here?
Yeah, I mean, this one's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward, but it's got the second highest total of the slate behind just Chiefs Falcons. It's a tight spread. And both teams, despite having 9 losses, have playoff hopes. They are under 10%, according to numberFire. But that's still important at this time of year. I talked about Jalen Hurts last week, so this week I'm digging into the Cowboys since Dalton's return. Again, it's pretty straightforward because we know where the ball is going with this team, and that has so much value in daily fantasy where we're not guessing. The team that comes to mind is the Colts, who it might be that week. We don't have that option. We don't have that.
The answer is usually no one with them.
What's that?
The answer with them is usually no one.
Well, yeah. But for the Cowboys, we know where it's going to go. And Andy Dalton's been kind of okay since his Week 11 return. He's at 0.10 passing net expected points per drop back, which is shy of the NFL average of 0.13, but it's not egregiously so. His ADOT 7.4 yards, which is close to the league average of 7.7 on the full season. But in 2 games against bottom half pass defenses, in Philadelphia's 20th, he's put up 0.32 passing net expected points per drop back with a 57% success rate, both of those well over the NFL average. So there is kind of reason to believe that the Cowboys play close to their implied team total. It makes sense that this total is high, especially with the fireworks we've seen from Jalen Hurts. In this sample, Michael Gallup leads the team with 20% of the targets, which is 7 per game. If you weight those, it's 8.7 is sort of the equivalent of the targets because he's getting 1.2 downfield, 1.4 red zone targets. He's hurt. He might not play. If he does not play, it's going to open up some opportunity. And this is not the same situation where if you take Julio Jones off the field, they have only one playmaker.
Julio Jones?
What?
Michael Gallup isn't Julio Jones?
Okay, give me like
I'm kidding. Just calm down. Calm down.
Come on, man.
I mean, on this podcast, if people listen long enough, they might think we'd comp Michael Gallup to Julio Jones because we appreciate and adore Michael Gallup on this podcast.
We do.
Please be healthy, buddy.
But no, we talk all the time about taking a receiver off the field is going to open up volume, but it'll hurt the efficiency. They still have Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb. So I don't worry that much. It actually probably is helpful because both of these guys, Cooper and Gallup, were relevant last year. They've been less relevant this year. Part of that's quarterback play, but part of it's just having CeeDee Lamb there with an 18% target share over these past games with Dalton back. 1.2 downfield targets per game for Lamb, 0.6 in the red zone. Cooper's above him at 19%, one each of those high leverage looks. So the weighted workload favors Gallup, so does the salary. Then Cooper and Lamb. But Gallup, again, hurt his hip, may not play. If he does not, the team still has playmakers to keep this offense moving. Cooper's at a reasonable salary at 6,600, especially on a week where took me a long time. I was just staring at receivers for like an hour trying to figure out who to mention as my favorites. Lamb's at 6,000, Gallup's at 56. So Gallup would be the pick for me if he plays, but without him, Lamb and Cooper become, I think, really good plays in one of the best games of the week. So I would consider Lamb a bit of a core play at the salary. And then obviously if Ezekiel Elliott were to miss here, Tony Pollard would be pretty much a lock at 6,300. So can you A, play these receivers outside of game stacks? And if not, B, do you feel good enough about Dallas's offense to stack this game with Jalen Hurts?
I think they could win this game. So, I'm obviously very good with Dallas. I've been on their offense since that Baltimore game. I thought that they looked the points weren't good, but they looked pretty good. Hashtag film bro. I thought they looked okay in that game, and I've been okay with them since then. We used Tony Pollard last week. I bet them against the Bengals. So I've been okay with the Cowboys for a bit. And like you said, this is a good matchup. I think Darius Slay will be back, but there's still a lot of guys missing in that secondary. So this should still be a good spot for the Cowboys offense. So yeah, I think that's good for them, good for Hurts, good for Sanders to keep this game competitive and juicy. So I think it's a very good game. I have no issues with it at any situation. I think I agree with your ranking where it's Gallup first if he plays. If he gets into full practice by Friday, I should say. That's the way I'd phrase that. That's kind of my need for most injured guys. Cooper would be second for me above Lamb because I think that the salary gap between them is small enough where I can just get up to Cooper because he's been more productive. I think that Lamb, though, like you said, would be worthy of being like a fringe core play because he gets volume, should get more volume if Gallup can't go, and he's fine. He's not as good as Amari Cooper, but he's fine, especially for rookies. Very good. So I think they're all in play. And I think that I hope Gallup plays because Gallup at 56 would make things a lot easier. Yeah. But even if he can't go, I'm still okay with Lamb and Cooper for sure. And I think this game is a very good one.
Then what are you doing with the Eagles? Because I know we'd both be in on Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
I'm assuming. I don't want to speak for you with Jalen Hurts specifically. Okay. Miles Sanders, we're both going to like a lot. Any pass catchers for Philly?
Gosh, no. I would rather okay, so his punch in the face was Darnell Mooney. I guess kicked in the shin is probably the comp here because it's not that bad. It's okay, I'll take a kick in the shin. None of their pass catches have had more than 70 yards in a game with Hurts yet. Two people have had more than 50, and those guys were Alshon Jeffrey and Zach Ertz, and I'm not gonna use them. So
Rager's had 49 and 46.
Okay, but he's multiple. He's bad. Has he had 50 yards? He's had 50 yards, I think, once this year.
Yes, not twice. Well, who was his quarterback? Worst quarterback in the league for most of the year.
Okay, well, he hasn't been any better with Hurts, from a efficiency perspective. So, I don't know, man. I'd rather use Mims than Rager. I know that's stupid. I know it's stupid. But I don't know. At a certain point, I think it's because I used Rager too much earlier in the year, and I'm just burned. It was sad.
He has 2 downfield targets per game, and the 2. No, he's been way better. Jalen Hurts is passing that expected points per drop back to Jalen Rager's 0.37. and Carson Wentz is 0.11. Carson Wentz was actually like league average throwing to Jalen Reagor. And
if you
Carson
don't
Wentz,
even count sacks.
and Carson
Yes.
Wentz.
It's an upgrade, I agree. However, it hasn't mattered yet. It might matter here. I don't.
That's not a good excuse.
For me, it might be.
That's not no. If the peripherals are good and he hasn't had an arbitrary cutoff of 50 yards or scored, he had good usage last week. If he's healthy, I think he's in play.
Oh yeah, he's in play. I just don't want to use him. Like I'm not saying you can't use Jalen Reagor.
That's fine.
How
I just
about
don't want to.
Higgins or Reagor.
Higgins. I mean, Higgins is
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So you're not saying Reagor is a priority. You're saying he's an option.
yes, because receiver is not looking particularly great.
No. Okay. If you're saying he's an option, not a priority, I can get on board with that statement. He is an option.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
But also looking at receiving yardage totals over 2 games.
I don't care, man.
Not a good
I need a justification for hating Jalen Reagor. Goddard's a little too high salary, but I think he's like an option at 57 just because like I'd rather use Goddard than Reagor because he feels tight end. I've actually seen him do something at some point in his career.
Oh, he's had 43 and 39 yards, no touchdowns from Jalen Reagor.
I mean, you're not wrong. I did say that earlier, and I also would count that against him. So not really into the pass catch. I think if I'm going Hurts, I either use him by himself or with Miles Sanders and then run it back with Pollard. Honestly, like I've really grown fond of stacking quarterbacks with running backs in the same game. Like last week, it didn't work. But like Kyler Murray, Kenyon Drake, Miles Sanders lines were so fun because it allowed me to go crazy at wide receiver. Usually I'm so like constricted at receiver because of game stacks. Like I like getting other mini stacks elsewhere. So I could do that again with Hurts, Sanders, and Pollard.
Not to linger too long on this game, but I think it's a great mini stack game with Cooper, Lamb, Gallup, and then Goddard, Reagor, and Miles Sanders. Pollard obviously would be in there, but even if you're not playing Jalen Hurts, I think that you can just pair like Goddard and Lamb for some correlation.
Where is Hurts for you among quarterbacks this week?
I don't know who my loves are. He's second. He's my second love, so I got to put him pretty high. I mean, Mahomes is number 1, like in his own tier. I would probably put Lamar in his own tier. Because he's almost back to himself. I think Hurts might be number 3 for me.
I have the same ranking and same tiering. I think that Baker and Justin Herbert are also in that second tier, though, or third tier, I should say.
I'm high on Deshaun Watson as like a tournament pivot.
Yeah,
but
I just don't think the Bengals will do enough to get me on Deshaun. But
you do think the Jets will do enough?
Yes. The Jets
just wanted to have you say that.
The Jets with Mims, Perriman, and Crowder are a better team than Ryan freaking Finley with the Bengals.
You're right.
So there. Eat it, bro. Let's move and talk about the mid-range running backs because similar to last week, the mid-range backs will be the story of the slate. We did lose Cam Akers, which is sad. But there are also he played through a high ankle sprain. He tried to come through for us. So Cam Akers, I am eternally grateful. Thank you.
Yes.
You shouldn't have because it's probably bad for you, but like, thank you. We appreciate it. There are still good options here. And with the Chiefs being super high salaried, we need to look for savings. And there are some good options here. And whoever is at the top depends on injury news because if we get Tony Pollard with no Zeke, he's pretty obvious. He did benefit from that huge touchdown on Sunday, but also had 30 adjusted opportunities, 56% of the team's red zone touches. If Zeke sits, Pollard is the top running back on the slate after considering salary at $6,300. If not, I'd rank Austin Eckler first. It's between him and Montgomery. Eckler ranks first in this group in adjusted opportunities per game in his most relevant sample. He actually is ahead of Pollard there and is first on the entire slate if we assume no McCaffrey. He's also second in yards per game and is in a game with a relatively high total and a tight spread. Eckler does have touchdown issues. He's just 25% of the red zone touches in this time, but that is worst in this group. But if we look since he returned from his injury, it does get a bit better. It's at 30% there, 27% inside the 10. So yeah, he's going to get vultured, but he hasn't scored a touchdown since returning, and he still has 18 or more FanDuel points twice in 4 games. So I'll put him first. Second for me is David Montgomery. He is the highest salary guy in this group, but it's for a good reason. You mentioned the workload's been unreal, facing the Jags. Second highest implied total in this group, leads the slate in red zone share. You can just keep on riding him if you don't want to deal with the tomfoolery of the Chargers' red zone usage. Miles Sanders is third for me in a projected tight, high-scoring game. He's at just 22.5 adjusted opportunities per game with Hurts, but 113 yards per game, 38% of the red zone chances. So I will put him third. Jonathan Taylor is fourth. And I will say that he is firmly in the same tier as Sanders. So if Sanders gets too popular, I actually think it's viable to pivot to Taylor because he's in a projected tight game too. His team has playoff hopes, as do the Eagles. He leads this group in yards per game. His red zone role went up last week. Also played a season high 70% of the snaps. The two concerns we had with Taylor were snap rate and red zone usage, and both those are very good last week. The Steelers are tough, but they've been more beatable by backs since Devin Bush got hurt. So I am going to rank Eckler and Montgomery above Taylor. But I want to make sure I am overweight on Taylor if people avoid him due to the matchup. It's not the same situation as Montgomery last week because Montgomery also had a good matchup. But I think that it grades out similarly for Taylor, where if he winds up at 5%, I want to be at least 15 to make myself benefit if he does do what I think he could do in this game. So to me, I think it's Pollard if he starts, then Eckler, Montgomery, Sanders, and Taylor. All are good options, and I am going to load up on this range. How are you ranking this group?
I had to type it into the FanDuel search bar to rank them so I can keep it straight. Pollard, if Zeke's out, is number one. That's easy. I would go Montgomery number two.
Okay.
Even at salary. Miles, Eckler, then Taylor. I feel highest on Montgomery because of the workload and the red zone work. I like the Eagles game a lot better than the Broncos-Chargers game, which I don't dislike. Eckler has been involved inside the 10. He's got 6 opportunities inside the 10 since his return. I think Herbert's at 4, Kelly and Balaj are at 3.
Do you include the 10-yard line inside the 10 or no?
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's 7. I think it's 7. Because he said 5 carries and 2 targets, but anywho.
When I ran it, it was...
Run it again, bro. Anyway, not to distract.
I have 5 and 1.
Okay. It's 5 and 2, I'm pretty sure. But anyway. Do you
rate a target? No, wait. He's got 2 targets from inside the 10 instead of 1.
Yeah.
That changes everything. I think the slate is Austin Eckler's.
He's the number 1 running back by a mile because of that second target.
I would honestly rather play Austin Eckler than Patrick Mahomes.
Agreed. At quarterback. Agreed. Anyway, I distracted you. So you have Sanders above Eckler because you like that game more?
Yes.
You want to do another bet? We have Mooney versus Mims. You don't want to do Sanders versus Eckler?
Not after I've learned that Eckler has 2 targets from the 10. Just changes everything.
It does. Well, I wrote about it for my thing, and I want to make sure I'm not being inaccurate. I just I don't want to give out bad info, and I get very.
Sometimes there's just little weird changes.
Are you pulling from our play-by-play query?
Yeah,
that's where I'm getting it from. What are we doing anyway? Whatever. Okay, so you have Montgomery. Well, Pollard won. Montgomery, Sanders, Eckler, Taylor.
Yeah.
Are you as willing to use Taylor as I am, or am I too high on him?
You're not too high on him. For me, it's more I hate that game. I think that game could be very ugly. Looking at both, I don't know if we're going to talk about this game later or not, but in my notes I won't say what I actually wrote about Ben Roethlisberger, but against top 12 pass defenses, Indy's 6th. Just 2 games he's played. He's had a pretty easy schedule. 0.02 passing net expected points per drop back, with a 5.4 yard ADOT. And then Rivers also has had a really easy schedule. 0.04 passing net expected points per dropback, 40% success rate in 2 games against top 12 pass defenses. So basically, they haven't played many top 12 pass defenses, and they've both been bad in those games. So I don't really believe in that game very much. It could obviously shoot out because we've seen these quarterbacks be good. But I feel lowest on that game overall, which is why I'd be lowest on Taylor.
But are you comfortable getting like 15 to 20% of him?
Sure.
Okay. Because that's where I'm at too. So I think we're on the same page there. I think that the concerns you raise are fully valid. So I think this mid-range is very good, and I'm comfortable just loading up on exposure to it. And I think that it's worthwhile. We'll talk about some other guys to consider in the player picks later on. But first, to those of you listening in Colorado, last week, FanDuel, Bud Light, and the Denver Broncos partnered to bring you the Bud Light Pick and Kick bonus with one goal in mind: to give you more ways to win this NFL season. And this week, they're doing it all over again. The program is simple. For every field goal and extra point the Broncos kicker makes, whether it's Brandon McManus off the COVID list or someone else, against the Los Angeles Chargers on December 27th, fans who have placed a moneyline bet of at least $25 on the game will receive a $3 bonus added to their FanDuel Sportsbook account. If the kicker makes 3 field goals and 3 extra points, because Drew Lock scores 3 touchdowns and is awesome, that's $18 in bonus cash. December 27th is right around the corner, so crack open a Bud Light, download the FanDuel Sportsbook mobile app, and place your bet today. Let's actually start things off with that game, because why not? The third highest total on the slate is that Chargers-Broncos game. It's at 48.5, and the Chargers are favored by 3. The total has come down 1.5 since open, and just 22% of the money is on the over. So how are you viewing this game? Any quarterbacks here? And what about the pass catchers?
I'm wavering on Justin Herbert versus Deshaun Watson specifically. I am worried that the Bengals just sort of – we're not going to talk about the game, are we?
I don't plan to.
No. That they can just kind of run a lot on the Texans. So I might bump up Herbert. I don't really love this game at first glance, though.
Is it mainly because of the playoff stuff, or are there other warning signs for you?
It's playoff stuff. It's health of the pass catchers. I don't know how healthy Keenan Allen is.
Yeah.
I don't know what whole – like if I knew that he was fully healthy and they were going to play him his full workload, I would really like him in this matchup. I don't know. Nothing really jumps out to me. I've kind of sworn off Drew Lock. My love considerations for this game are Herbert, Allen, Eckler, and Noah Fant. Okay. But they're all sort of like borderline, and I didn't get to any of them in my actual write-up. So I don't know. Maybe I'm too low on it, but what are you seeing here?
So there are 3 games on the slate where both teams are in the top half of the league in Football Outsider situation neutral pace. This is one of them. Chiefs Falcons is another, and Colts Steelers is also there. I think the pace is good. I think neither defense is what we need to avoid, especially with the Broncos dealing with all their injuries. If Keenan can't go, so last week Keenan was banged up and Mike Williams is banged up, and Herbert still played really, really well. That gives me faith that he would not bottom out if Allen were to sit. And also, like, that opened up a lot for Mike Williams. In the game where Keenan left early against the Saints, Mike Williams had 8 targets. 3 of those were deep. He had 109 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's $5,700. I'd be really into Mike Williams if Keenan could not go. I'm going to be on Eckler regardless. I think the main appeal of Herbert is that he is the exact same salary as Jalen Hurts. And Hurts is going to be 1 or 2 in quarterback popularity this week, I would think. So to me, I think that Herbert is a really good tournament pivot. I can't rank him above Hurts for any reason outside of that, like straight up. But like I can definitely view him as a pivot. So to me, I actually think it's not a bad game. I do think that Jerry Jeudy is an option. I think that Noah Fant is an option. Fant's oversalaried, but like so is every tight end not named Travis Kelce. Yeah, not named Travis Kelce.
That's weird. Like everyone's like in that 55 to 62 range.
Except for Austin Hooper and Cole Kmet, which is detrimental. And Evan Engram, I guess, too. I think this game's pretty good, though. And I'm willing to pivot to Herbert, but it's just a pivot. It's not a he is better than Hurts situation.
It's funny you said that about the Steelers and Colts being up in pace. I know that's full season numbers, but they're both bottom 11 over the past 5 weeks in my pace rankings.
Yeah.
It was just curious.
Yeah. Anyway, the headliner on this slate is the Chiefs versus the Falcons. So let's talk about it. Game opened with a total, it's the only game on the slate with a total higher than 50 points, 53.5. So 4 points better than any game. Chiefs are favored by 10.5, but they're pass heavy even when they're up big. The Falcons aren't exactly dead. Like in that Jets game, Patrick Mahomes threw 22 times in the second half, despite the fact that they were up by, I think, like 12 at halftime, and they won pretty easily. So I'm going to be heavy on this game. But the question is whether you'll use any of the ancillary pieces here, or is it just the studs?
Who's an ancillary piece?
Sammy Watkins, Mecole Hardman, Le'Veon Bell, Russell Gage, Hunter Henry, Henry Hurst, Harrison. Oh my gosh. I hate these stupid tight ends. Hayden Hurst, Hunter Henry, Hayden Hurst, Hunter Henry, Hunter, Hayden Henry, Hayden Hurst.
Yeah,
I hate these tight ends. They're the worst.
Okay, so probably no Sammy.
Agreed.
Definitely not Mecole Hardman. Everyone loves him. I'm always lower on Mecole Hardman. He's still
I don't think
playing
they love him as much recently.
Yeah, he's playing like 30% of the snaps still.
He had 9 targets last week. I think that he is not someone I want to use. But like I don't think he's the worst option. Like if I don't use him, it's not going to break my heart at all. But like I could see a situation where I use him.
I would do it if I'm doing like a mega stack, like an onslaught stack, which I probably will do. Yeah. The snap rate's just, if I'm not mistaken, he played.
No, it was 33% last week too.
Yeah,
You're right.
So, I don't like to chase targets on low snaps. I know that's kind of what he can do, and that's part of the appeal of him. But he always gets like these high leverage looks, and it feels like he's super involved. But then you look back, it's like he played 30% of the snaps. So I would probably say no to Hardman unless it's like a heavy stack where it's like Mahomes, Tyreek, Hardman, Hurst, and like Ridley or something.
Yeah.
But I will play Hayden Hurst.
Okay.
I will use some Russell Gage. And like I said, I will probably just play Le'Veon in like game stacks. I think that's what I said.
So Mecole actually has multiple deep targets in 3 out of 4 games since Watkins came back. Again, I'm not saying you need to use him more. Like, don't go more than like 5 to 10%. But like he is an option if you want low salaried exposure to this game. Le'Veon's an option if you want low salaried exposure. I'm probably not going to get to Gage because I think his salary is too high. I think that he is defensible. Like in the World Fantasy Football Championship, people used Russell Gage last week, and like they're smarter than me. So like I can't push back, but I think that the cap ceiling is enough where I would really rather not get there. Rashford Higgins is a better option in that same range. I'd use him over Rager personally, but anyway, I think Hurst probably is the better option there. Like among the low salaried guys in this game outside of Le'Veon, Hurst is probably number 1 to me.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. We're not using Ito Smith, despite the fact he is now the lead runner for the Falcons, correct?
No.
What about Julio? If he plays, $7,500. In the games, Julio has been a full go with Calvin Ridley. 24% of the overall targets, 40% deep, 28% in the red zone. I think that if Julio is a full in practice on Friday, he is among the best receiver plays in the slate. Do you agree?
Yes. I'm going to talk about Calvin Ridley in player picks. Julio's kind of lumped in because they both get a lot of downfield work. I'll break down the Chiefs because if you look back at like the Chiefs, they rate out really well. They got the red number 3 and wide receiver defense on FanDuel. They're really good in target success rate. I think they're 3rd against receivers. Yeah, 3rd. But I think there are paths to having those 2 guys specifically beat them.
It's like they're not normal. So I'm okay ignoring matchups with them. A big game with playoff implications is between the Seahawks and the Rams. If the Seahawks win, they win the NFC West. The Rams can clinch a playoff berth and become the favorites to win the NFC West. If they win, Total is up to 47.5. It opened at 46.5. The spread is just 1.5 points. Both these offenses are struggling. So how are you feeling about this game?
I don't like it a ton. I think you and I differ there.
I don't know. Realistically, it's a zero quarterback game for me, and there aren't a ton of other options I like. So I like it from I think the over is very viable, but it's hard for me to talk myself into a lot of guys for like individual DFS pieces.
Yeah. I can't really bank on either Daryl Henderson or Malcolm Brown. I think that is a problem. Jared Goff, since their week 9 bye, about league average with 0.12 passing and expected points per dropback, 59% passing success rate, which is like 10 percentage points above the NFL average, but 5.2 yard ADOT, 9.1% downfield attempt rate, which is about half of the league average. Just not a whole lot of downfield throws. And I guess last week was just one of those look ahead games where they didn't take the Jets seriously, and we're looking ahead to this game specifically. It's very possible, like you said, we've seen this team struggle one week and then be great the next week. We've seen Jared Goff throw for like 400 yards numerous times throughout his career. I just don't know if this is what Seattle wants to do. I don't think it's going to turn into that back and forth shootout. Seattle's 28th in pace, 23rd in pass rate, between 20 and 80% win probability since week 11. Like, Russ is not very good. He's leading at span. The touchdown rate's coming back to earth. I just don't see I don't see how this game shoots out unless the teams completely change what they've been for like 5 weeks now.
I think that the game environment is what puts me pretty high on Robert Woods specifically. He's $7,300. He gets great target shares. He's a love for me. But like getting pieces beyond that is tough. Tyler Higbee's oversalaried. He's playing a lot more snaps now, which is good, but he's oversalaried. I don't want to use Cup.
Woods was the one guy who jumped out to me.
Like, Henderson's fine. I think you can definitely like defend using DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett because like they're DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, but there's no data-driven reason to be super high on them. Yeah. So to me, it's Woods, effectively.
What about your boy Chris Carson?
So he was at one point a player pick for me because he set a season high in snap rate last week at 70%. He gets targets. He gets red zone usage. It's a good game.
Is it a good game?
That's what I said. Like, again, I think there is a path to the over here. Therefore, it's a good enough game. And like, if I'm grading out like usage, like Chris Carson has enough usage to be good in that situation, especially if they decide to lean on him for this playoff push, which is literally what they did last week. The reason that I took him out,
70%. He's maxed out at 25 adjusted opportunities in a game.
I know, but again, it could be on the rise that they think he is their best option. The reason I took him out is because Rashad Penny might have a bigger role in his second game back. So I think that Carson is worth looking at, and if you talk yourself into him, cool. I don't know if I'll get there personally, just because there are so many other good options. I think he is a defensible play, though. I will say that. Either quarterback for you or no?
Not really, and weirdly, if I had to pick one, it might be Jared Goff at this point.
I know. It's weird. The third highest implied total on the slate belongs to the Baltimore Ravens. They are 10.5-point favorites here against the Giants. Total is 45.5. The Giants might get Daniel Jones back, which would be good, but the Ravens showed last week that they don't need the opponent to do anything to come through in DFS. So are you in on Lamar Jackson here? And what about J.K. Dobbins and the pass catchers?
Love Lamar. I might make him my first love because I think Mahomes is set in very, I don't know. I think you could just pencil him in for 25 FanDuel points, and how much he goes above that is remains to be seen. So I don't think it's a week where you can really punt or have a capped ceiling play. A quarterback, and Lamar is definitely not someone who has a capped ceiling.
Agreed. Shockingly.
I would say Marquise Brown's kind of back on the menu for me. His role is a lot better than it was early on in the season.
When you say back, that implies that he was at one point on the menu.
Yeah. He never really was for me.
He was for me, but he's back there for me too.
Dobbins, I would say probably not. I said this last week too. He's going to get like 15 touches however that comes. It's going to be about 14, 15 carries, not a whole lot of receiving. And he's got
what's projected right now. I'm going to say 14 carries. We'll go 70 yards. He's going to break one this time.
Okay.
And 1 touchdown. So exactly 14 or exactly 13 FanDuel points. That's what J.K. Dobbins will do. No more, no less.
I think that's about fair. You want to make a bet? If
Exactly
it's anything other than exactly 13 FanDuel points?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Even odds.
Yes. So I would say Lamar, maybe Marquise, probably not to Dobbins.
I think that if we're doing the same thing we said on Monday, if I have 10 Lamar lineups, probably Marquise Brown in 3, Mark Andrews in 3. Those will probably be the only Mark Andrews lineups I have. And then 4 Lamar by himself. Maybe 1 at Dobbins, but I'm not going to. And I think that if I'm doing that, I am okay running it back with Darius Slayton because he's $5,000. He has 8 and 9 targets the past 2 weeks, 3 deep targets in both those. He and Daniel Jones have been really good on deep balls this year. So I do think that it's actually in play to run it back with Slayton or Evan Engram. I prefer Slayton, but I think that Evan Engram's an option too. They're a really good defense, but I think the volume there should be enough if Daniel Jones plays.
Yeah. We saw Slayton's snap rate go back up into the 90s 3 games ago. It's been he and Evan Engram with like 24% of the targets each.
Good.
Slayton's good. I think Evan. I mean, it's not.
I agree.
I've liked Evan Engram most of the season, and the volume.
I change. Yeah.
I know, but he's very good. Yeah. So
I think that they work in bringbacks. You don't have to bring it back with Giants, as we saw last week, but you can. I think that's the way to note that. Yeah. No weather because we're recording a day early, so make sure you check the numberFire games and lineups page on Sunday. So let's dive into our positional play, starting at quarterback. Brandon, who do you have there?
I had Deshaun Watson, but the more I think about it, if the Bengals want to run the ball, they can probably do it on the Texans, and that could really ruin Deshaun. Even though even though they haven't had playoff odds, he's been slinging it for 318 plus in 4 of his past 5 games. But I'm going to pivot to Lamar. You need upside at quarterback if Patrick Mahomes is on the slate in a matchup against the Falcons. Like, you need that. You can't take down a tournament if you get like 18 points from your quarterback, unless Mahomes just struggles uncharacteristically here. But we also have Lamar. We have other quarterbacks who have ceilings. So I'm going to go with Lamar. Definitely healthy. Ran 10 times last week, just 35 yards, but a touchdown, 9+ carries in 8 straight games. He's averaging 73 rushing yards per game, which is like 2 passing touchdowns in there in that sample. So I think Lamar is just a core play.
And they need a win too.
So I'm going to go there. And my second love is Jalen Hurts. I know neither of these guys are values, but I really believe that this is not a week to have a cap ceiling play at quarterback. So I'm going to go with Jalen Hurts at 82. We saw that upside last week from Hurts. He's run 29 times in the past 2 games. We saw him take advantage of a beatable defense last week, 338 passing yards, 0.21 passing net expected points per drop back, despite 6 sacks. So that really takes off your passing net expected points by taking sacks. You're still above league average there. The Cowboys are below average in pressure rate, according to Pro Football Reference. They've maxed out at 3 sacks over their past 6 games. They're 23rd in adjusted pass defense based on numberFire's metrics. So I'm spending up a quarterback this week. It's going to be at Hurts, Jackson, and your boy here. You look like you saw something that I said that was wrong.
No, you're right. The pressure rate for Dallas I thought was higher, but you're right. So I was wrong. But yes, I think that Hurts is number 3 for me, behind Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. So let's talk about Mahomes. If I'm not splurging a running back, which I'm not this week, I can pay up for Mahomes, and I would like to, because we know the Chiefs are not going to take their foot off the gas if they have a lead. We know Mahomes should be efficient. If they win this game, they clinch the first overall seed in a bye, so they can sit next week, which would probably be a good thing. So this is the first time in a month they've faced a pass defense outside the top 10, which is wild. And it's just their second home game in that time. So I'm just going to do it. Give me Mahomes. I know that that's not a hot take, but I don't care. It's our podcast.
We don't have any running backs to pay up. Pay up.
So whatever, Mahomes. My second love will be Baker Mayfield. You'd mentioned we need upside at quarterback. And if you had talked to me about this a month ago, I would have said Baker does not have enough upside to be justifiable. But Cleveland is fourth in projected offensive efficiency based on numbers I've been tinkering with for this week. Kansas City is first. The only other team in the top 9 in projected offensive efficiency that's on this slate is the Texans. So the Browns are fourth. My one concern with Baker was upside, but he has 29, 31, and 21 points the past 3 games. He had 31 earlier this year. Efficiency breeds fantasy points, and he's been crazy efficient recently. He's $7,600. I will consider Justin Herbert. I'll consider Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts. But I think after that second tier of Mahomes first tier, Lamar second tier, I think Baker's kind of in that mix with Jalen Hurts. He's at least there. I think it's defensible to put Hurts a tier above Baker, and I would not push back on that. But I think Baker's close enough where I can consider him there, despite the fact that Hurts is better. What are you smirking at?
I just know you do a lot of work with college quarterbacks, and I know that you...
Baker's my guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know that I feel like you weren't the highest on Jalen Hurts.
I wasn't the highest, but I also wasn't the lowest.
No, I know.
Also, it's kind of like vindication of Carson Wentz not being super high in him. So it's like, I can refer to Jalen Hurts now, I guess. I don't know, whatever. My takes about college quarterbacks drive a lot of my rooting interest. So just take what I say about some guys, Baker, Goff, Drew Lock, with a grain of salt. Let's move to running back. Brandon, who do you have there for this week?
I'm going to start with Nick Chubb. I know he's assuming McCaffrey's not at full health. He's the highest salaried back, but I don't want to just gloss over him and say we have all these options in the mid-range, which we do. You basically start with Mahomes and build in the mid-range at running back and feel pretty good everywhere else. So that's another reason why we're recommending these high salaried quarterbacks. But I'm going to go with Nick Chubb. He's like a Derrick Henry in 2 ways. He's primarily rushing only, but he does still have a ceiling from his ability. He's very, very talented, and his workload. It's not the same workload at all as what Derrick Henry has. That's the key distinction. So the salary is too high for me, but 21 adjusted opportunities per game since returning in week 10, but 3.3 red zone carries per game. The Jets do grade out as a pretty solid rush defense, in most situations, but Quinn Williams just got a concussion. I don't know what this situation will be with him there for Sunday. We love this offense this week. Chubb, we like Baker, but there's no reason that Chubb can't have a multi-touchdown game, 150 yards rushing. So I don't want to overlook Chubb and just focus on these lower salaried backs, or the mid-salaried backs, I should say. My second love is David Montgomery. It's not point chasing. He's probably my RB1 at this point, with the workload being what it is. 32 carries last week, 2 touchdowns, but he's averaged 25.5 adjusted opportunities per game in 10 games without Tariq Cohen. I really like this new Bears offense. He's a focal point of it, if not the focal point. And the Jaguars are mid-level rush D. The Bears could get some good field position because their defense is good, and the Jaguars could struggle. So I think Montgomery's in a great spot, and they need to win. And my third love is Miles Sanders. I think the arrow's up on this offense. Sanders now has 14 and 17 carries under Hurts's offense, 7 total targets. Didn't do much last week, 90 yards and no touchdowns, but 22.5 adjusted opportunities per game for him. With Hurts, 113 yards per game, 4 red zone carries per game. I think the game is good overall. I might have changed my tune on Eckler versus Miles, but I think Miles is still a very good play because I love the game.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was searching for Wyatt Teller injury news because he has a high ankle sprain and might not play this week. I was trying to see if he was practicing Wednesday. In the process, found out that he proposed to his girlfriend at the stadium this week. Huh. So engagement narrative in favor of Nick Chubb. What was the answer? Well, it looked like yes. I don't know. I didn't have the audio on. But it looked like yes. She seemed happy. Okay. So engagement narrative in favor of Nick Chubb, because Wyatt Teller will be extra happy. I don't know, whatever. If he plays. So keep an eye on Wyatt Teller and Quinnen Williams. Arrows up on Nick Chubb because of the engagement if Teller can go. My first love, again, is a pivot for tournaments, and it's a tough matchup, but I do like Jonathan Taylor. The defense for the Steelers has slipped recently. They let up 97 yards to Giovanni Bernard on 27 adjusted opportunities. I think we can project Taylor a little bit beneath that, but better efficiency. They also let up to more than 100 yards to J.K. Dobbins, 87 to Gus Edwards, And Taylor's role has been really good recently. He's averaged 127 yards from scrimmage over his past 4 games. He has a better red zone role now than he did before. So I think that if he flies super under the radar, Jonathan Taylor will be a very good pivot, a la David Montgomery last week. Austin Eckler is my number 2. I think that his role is good enough to overcome the touchdown concerns. He is at 31 adjusted opportunities per game in his games with Justin Herbert. He has 119 yards from scrimmage per game in that time. His red zone role has been better since he came back because Joshua Kelly was so rough in the time that he was out. Like, Kalen Ballage will still take stuff, but like, if Eckler gets you a touchdown, he's getting you 24 plus FanDuel points. And I'll take that at 7,000. So I do like Eckler a lot. My third love is dependent on news. If Zeke does not play, go Tony Pollard. He's the top running back in the slate. If Duke Johnson, number 2, if James Conner does not go Benny Snell at 54. He had a great role last week. DeForest Buckner is banged up for the Colts. I think that'd be good enough to use Snell as my number 2 at 54. I'd go David Johnson, number 3, if Duke Johnson can't go, given the receiving yardage last week, over 100 yards receiving. Finally had good efficiency there, and showed access to a ceiling, which he has not shown this year. And number 4 would be Daryl Henderson and Le'Veon Bell, I guess. Like, they're kind of the same. I prefer Bell. You talked me into that, but Henderson's there too. So depends on how news breaks. I hope we get a situation where we get Tony Pollard and Benny Snell, because that'd be great, and I could just splurge on Mahomes, Hill, Ridley, Kelsey. But if that doesn't happen, hopefully we get one of Pollard, David Johnson, etc. So just keep an eye on the news this week because that will change a lot of things at running back later on. Let's let's move to a wide receiver.
If you want to skip tight end and defense, I'm all for it.
I'll consider it, but talk to me about wide receiver first.
All 3 of mine are actually going to be like 2-for-1s in a way.
Okay. I like it.
And I know I said bad things about like a Denzel Mims, Brashad Perriman 2-for-1, but this is very different because I like all 3 of these offenses more. But I'm going to go with Calvin Ridley / Julio Jones for number 1. Ridley is 8,700, which is pretty high, but we can get there in various ways. Love this game, obviously. And I worry a little bit about the matchup. The Chiefs have allowed only 1 receiver to get to 20 FanDuel points, and that was Curtis Samuel. But only 5 receivers have gotten at least 10 targets against them. In total, 5 receivers have gotten to 17.8 FanDuel points. So like the 20-point cutoff is, you want more than 20 FanDuel points, but they haven't really been that stingy in that regard. And they generally have the guys who've gotten to 17.8 have multiple downfield shots, and that's what we know Ridley and Julio can get. Ridley's averaged 10.3 targets, 4.3 downfield without Julio. He's still very good with Julio. Julio would elevate the offense, so I really hope Julio plays. That would also make Ridley harder to justify at 87, so I think he's even more interesting for tournaments in that regard. With Julio, it's 8.3 targets per game, 3 downfield targets per game. So again, still getting downfield work. I'll put Julio number 1, Ridley number 2 if Julio plays. My second loves are CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup. I'm not sure if Gallup will play. If he does, he's my preference. I talked about them already. But if he doesn't, I think that bumps CeeDee Lamb up a notch. The offense still has 2 good options. I would honestly be okay with throwing Amari Cooper in here too. I know the salary is 6,600, so it's a little bit harder, but I would rank if Gallup's healthy, Gallup, Cooper, Lamb. If there's no Gallup, probably just go with Lamb because he'd get a higher boost. I don't know.
Probably.
Either way, they're both good. I think is what we're good saying. Jim's nodding for anyone listening on audio.
Thinking through it, I agree with
you. My third love is Rashard Higgins. You could lump Jarvis Landry in here as well. So again, kind of going the 2-for-1 route. But Higgins is 5,800 over the past 4 games. Baker's playing really well. 0.48 passing net expected points per drop back. Since Odell Beckham's injury, but with Austin Hooper playing, Higgins is at 18% of the targets. 2.4 downfield targets per game. Just 4.8 overall targets per game, but the Jets are bottom 12 against the deep ball this season based on passing net expected points. He's running 78% of the routes the past 5 weeks. And there's Darnell Mooney, who's still in play for me.
Oh, gosh. What was the bet?
Mooney and Mims.
Yeah. Okay. So with Higgins and with Baker, it's worth noting the Browns can still win the AFC North. They're plus 270 right now at FanDuel Sportsbook, so they have a lot of motivation to win. Do they have the Steelers next week? They might. Anyway, they have a lot of motivation to win. So that's good for Higgins, good for Baker, et cetera, et cetera. My first love is Robert Woods. He's only $7,300 in a game that I think could hit the over. Again, it's not like a great game for DFS because there aren't a lot of pieces we want to use, but it's a good football game from the over perspective. Woods has 28% of the team's targets since their bye. He has at least 80 yards from scrimmage in all but one of those. He has at least 8 targets in all those games, and he should get good volume in a decent game against a beatable defense. That's good for me with Woods at 73. My second love is a guy we have not discussed yet in a game we have not discussed yet. That's Curtis Samuel. The Panthers played hard last week despite being eliminated. So Samuel kept his good role despite an injury going in. He has 22% of the overall targets, 22% deep, and 30% in the red zone in games since DJ Moore, or with DJ Moore since he returned. He also has at least 1 rush attempt in each of those. He has 10 rush attempts inside the red zone this year. I'll take another swipe at Samuel at 59. It's partly because this range is not very good. I'd prefer Higgins over Samuel, but Samuel's in play. My third love is Denzel Mims. I'm kind of hoping people have forgotten about him, given that he missed that one game and then had the Rams last week, which would work for me because in the games with everyone healthy, Mims has 25% of the overall targets and 42% of the deep targets. This is just their second time in this span facing a non-solid pass defense, and I think that allows him to show a ceiling. He has not gotten to 85 yards yet. That's my cutoff at wide receiver. 85 yards or 2 touchdowns. 2 touchdowns probably not going to happen, but I think the 85 yards could. So I think that Mims can get there at 53. I also would consider Jerry Jeudy, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, and Darius Slayton as other options in the 5,000 range. Not 5,000 for Lamb, but close enough. So we have some options. Also, Mike Williams, if Keenan Allen cannot go, might be – he's like probably a hair above Higgins if that happens. So be reactive to the Chargers situation. Who do you have at tight end, Brandon?
Believe it or not, I'm going to go with Travis Kelce.
Oh, I like it, though. I like it.
We historically have not mentioned the highest salary tight end, but Kelsey's very different, especially on this slate.
He's not a tight end, which helps.
Yeah. There's just not a whole lot of relief by, like, you're not getting Noah Fant at like 55 or anything. Right. Fant 62. Mark Andrews is 7,000. And then most of the tight ends with any semblance of a workload are between like 55 and 6,000. So that helps me get to Kelce here. I know that's a huge gap, but there's also a huge gap between Kelce and all the other tight ends. Over the past 5 weeks, he's averaging 109, almost 110 yards per game, 12.7 weighted targets per game. Only one other tight end, Logan Thomas, is above 9. It's a huge gap there. My initial simulations give Kelce a 22% chance to get to 20 FanDuel points. The next best odds are 5.8% for Dallas Goedert. I don't know. I mean, that'll probably change as I get more information and adjust stuff, but, you know.
Do you want to hear Kelce's catch totals in the past 7 games?
Sure.
8, 10, 8, 8, 8, 8, 8.
Seems good.
He's $8,800 appropriately. He's good.
Yeah. If I'm not getting to Kelce, I'm going to try to save more. Probably bump the whole way down to Evan Ingram a lot, 5,300. Most tight ends are bad. Ingram's biggest concern right now is his quarterback play, which is a very real concern, but he's run 87% of the team's pass routes over the past 3 weeks. Third most among main slate tight ends. His ADOT's 9 yards in that span. 28% target share in 2 games with Colt McCoy. I know those targets aren't necessarily the most fruitful, but the Ravens are actually 29th in target success rate allowed to tight ends. So at the low salary, I think he works.
Yeah, I think that Ingram is the other guy I'd be willing to run it back with outside of Slayton. Would rank Slayton first, but Ingram definitely there for sure. Logan Thomas' salary has gone up, but it's for good reason because he's shown some extra juice recently. He had 101 yards last week. He had 98 yards in week 13, and this team needs a win for the playoffs, and it seems like they are leaning on him to get there. And I think what's good about Thomas is that those games have come with both Alex Smith and Dwayne Haskins at quarterback because I don't know who's going to play. I don't know. Thomas is, again, oversalaried at 6,000, but whatever. He's there. I also will use Austin Hooper despite my better judgment. I had sworn him off, but tight end sucks, so fight me. He is at least getting some looks. He had a touchdown last time out. He has a better role than Cole Kmet, and I happily used Kmet at the same salary last week. So I'm a fish, but I'm going to use Austin Hooper this week. That is my analysis. What do you have for defense?
Chargers at 3,700 against the Broncos. Drew Lock has not had any interceptions the past 2 games, but
because he's good.
He is second in danger plays per pass attempt, according to Player Profiler. So a lot of havoc could happen. The biggest concern, he doesn't really take a lot of sacks, which was surprising to me. And you need sacks for fantasy points. Like 60% of fantasy points come from sacks and interceptions, but the interceptions can be there. And I'm willing to overlook it for the salary. And what should be a tight back and forth game, if the Chargers push the ball, should lead to some extra dropbacks for Drew Lock, which you never know what's going to happen there.
Yep, I think the Chargers are the top play for this week. I would also consider Dallas facing Jalen Hurts, but Hurts did take 6 sacks last week, was good despite that. So I'm not saying Dallas is a great play. I'm saying that they could work. He has been sacked on 9.2% of his dropbacks. Carson Wentz was 10.3%, so not as good of a spot, but Hurts took a lot of sacks in college, took a lot of sacks last week, took a safety because of an intentional grounding. So it's a better situation than they had, but we can still get some upside here. I would likely guess that nobody will use the Cowboys, with Hurts probably going to be popular. I prefer the Chargers by a pretty decent amount, but I think that the Cowboys are a pivot for tournaments we can use. I have used an unheavenly amount of Dallas Cowboys defense the past 2 weeks. It's worked out. It's not going to work out eventually. But
touchdown both those weeks, right?
They did, yeah. Carolina's defense is whatever. I could use them. I could use the Chiefs at 41 if I'm not stacking the Falcons. Definitely okay with that. Could use the Eagles. No, don't use the Eagles. That was stupid. Yeah, it's tough. There aren't a lot of good defenses this week.
No.
It's been rough. What a great note to finish on.
Just mix them up. Just mix them up a bit.
I don't know, man. I haven't been doing that recently. It's been fine, but I'm playing with fire. I am trying to get. Well, I guess the Panthers defense burned me, but whatever. Anywho, that is all that we have for this week. I think again we need to stress things will change by the time you get to Sunday. So make sure you are leaning heavily on your favorite player news source, refreshing things throughout the day on Friday for injury notes, Sunday as well. If you can't be around, it's tough, but make sure you are reactive to news. If I see it, I'll try to tweet about it, but whatever. Just think things through, try to be logical, try to project things out from a user's perspective and see what will happen, because things will change probably right after I finish recording this episode for today. Brandon, any final thoughts for you before we send people off?
Just get the FanDuel Scout app. It'll keep you up to date.
There we go. The player news guys doing their best.
James Robinson expects to play for Jaguars versus Bears.
I always get nervous when I get check my push notifications after the end. I'm like, okay, what did we miss while we were recording? Oh, the big news, the biggest news during recording. Brandon McManus off the COVID list. So that Bud Light promo, good to go. That is all that we have for today. We'll be back again on Monday to wrap it all up. But that is not all. You're on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. NBA is back, and so is Tom Vecchio with the Daily ISO every weekday right here on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Tom is breaking down the NBA DFS slate. Always a good helper for me to get my research started. So make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. If you like what you hear from Tom or from us, probably from Tom more so, make sure you leave us a rating and review. Brandon, if people have questions for you on Twitter, where can they find you there?
I'm at Gadula13, GDULA13.
Happy holidays to you, and I'm looking forward to talking to you once again on Monday. Big thank you and a happy holidays to Calvin Theobald, our video producer, for running the video side of things today. And always, thank you, Cal. Happy holidays to all of you listening. Good luck to you with your Christmas Day slate, with your Saturday only slate, with your Sunday slate. We're going to talk to you again on Monday to wrap it all up. This has been the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, powered by numberFire.